Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. Today, we're going to talk about the last guest that you had on, Tim Tillman.
Yeah. I've known Tim most of my life, but learned some things about him that I was aware of, as a kid, but didn't really strike me quite the way as now looking back as a father and adult, especially talking about some of the career transitions. And he was very vulnerable about what they were going through with their daughter when she had cancer, which I remember, but as a kid, you just don't think about the stress and strain that he would have been under.
Oh, it's got to be tough.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine as being a dad. And so that was my first time meeting Tim, but I had heard him on our radio show or on the radio advertisements that we have.
Yeah. So my brother Logan said he's kind of the voice of Veritas now.
He is.
He would do he would often lead singing for our church growing up. And as he talked about, they moved to Chicago years ago and they came back and now they're going to a different church. But for years, I mean, they actually had a quartet, an a cappella quartet he was a part of. He might still do some of that, but a very, very distinct voice.
He's got a golden voice. I love it. So I want to talk about what he's doing now, a lot of that piece, because I just thought it was awesome because it sounds like he's able to fund the ministry that he's a part of now. But before that, I did want to touch base on one thing. He was talking about when he started investing, the Dow was at 3,000. I checked what it was today.
What is it? I'm not even sure.
45,883.
And what that doesn't even tell the full story is in the dividends, because it'd be like having an apartment or having a house that appreciated from $3,000 to $45,000 and ignoring all the rent you collected along the way.
Oh, that's right.
So all of those dividends being paid out for all those decades. And I think the other point to make on that, because that is a fascinating, it's an amazing statistic, 3,000 to 45,000. People were losing their minds just a few years ago during COVID when the Dow went to 22,000, which was still 7 times higher than he had ever seen it when he started investing. But I think it's also important to remind people of those times. Yes, it climbed from 3 to 45, but a lot of temporary declines along the way. And I think sometimes people expect investing to be like walking a staircase where every step gets you a little higher, a little further, when in fact, it's a lot more like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you get to a point where you have to cross a valley to keep climbing. And that's where a lot of people quit the climb is when they're stuck in the middle of a valley.
Yeah, exactly. And for those that don't know, the Dow, it's tracking 30 of the top companies.
30 of the largest industrial companies in the United States. So it's not as broad as the S&P 500, doesn't cover as many, but absolutely huge, just gigantic US-based companies that obviously are very, very instrumental, very powerful movers in the US economy.
So it sounds like, so Tim, he worked a long career. It sounds like he was in the National Guard for a while, and then was it FedEx, right?
Worked in FedEx, administrative role at FedEx, and again, when he was talking about his daughter and going through cancer, she was very young. I mean, I remember maybe 1 or 2 when she was diagnosed.
Oh wow!
So they had not been married that long, so he was going through a transition with that. And transition in career, and then dealing with his daughter's health issues. And they were, I can't remember exactly, it's been a long time, but I believe having to fly out of state. Okay. And in the midst of all this, he was talking about getting started with his long-term planning. And it struck me as I was sitting there talking to him, people have excuses for not building a long-term plan. And we talk about this a lot, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is very few people would say, no, planning for my future is not important. Like people aren't going to, we know it's important, but it's rarely urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is the importance gets pushed down the road. And I'm going to deal with this when things calm down after the summer.
Right.
And then it's, well, holidays are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And after the holidays, well, then it's, whatever the excuse is. It's January and it's cold and I'm depressed and lonely, whatever. I don't know.
Right.
But there's always a reason to not do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think of the excuses, and sometimes they're very legitimate, sometimes they're not. But it's never convenient to do hard things. It's never convenient to start working out or to clean up your diet. It's never convenient to work on your taxes. It's never convenient to build a long-term plan. I just thought of Tim and his family, and he was present with his family. It wasn't as if he was ignoring that, but he also didn't make excuses. He had plenty of excuses to delay the planning, delay investing. This is not a good time. It obviously wasn't a good time, but he made it work anyway.
That's awesome.
He just made the commitment. And I hope people listening to that, and we can link that show into this show's notes, but just thinking back of all of the, especially as a father, like all of the strain and stress that he'd been dealing with, but still could take a step out of that momentarily and say, okay, I don't want to neglect the future either.
Chad, some of the more, I would say, some of the best changes that I've ever made in my personal life was at really inconvenient times, it seems like. And the same goes for investing. I mean, certainly even my job change to come over here.
Yep.
That was, you remember, it was a tough time. But it's just doing those hard things. There's never a convenient time for anything ever, it seems like.
Well, and we were just talking about this last week about how a lot of people, when they start interacting with us, there's usually some sort of triggering event. Now, sometimes it's a really good thing, but a lot of times it's not. Maybe somebody's job gets eliminated and they get a severance package,
right? Or
their company just got bought out and the transition's not going well, or they have an illness, maybe an injury, maybe they lost a parent, maybe even a spouse. We've dealt with that a lot this summer. People who lost a spouse and their spouse handled a lot of the finances, and that's why they're coming to us. But I guess my encouragement would be to people listening is don't wait for a tragedy to be a triggering event. And there's always going to be excuses to not plan for the future. There's always going to be excuses to invest. There's always going to be, we already talked about volatility. There's always going to be storm clouds on the horizon saying this is not a good time. You should wait until whatever, this election cycle's over, until this job report come out, until rates do X, Y, and Z, whatever. There's always going to be a reason. But do the hard thing now and make a plan. Put something on your calendar, kind of a due date for yourself, even if it's arbitrary, that I will have made these strides towards planning out my future or towards investing more intentionally by such and such a date. And my encouragement, don't wait till beginning of the year. I mean, January 1 is when everybody makes these resolutions. Make a November 7th resolution if you have to, but there's, like you said, some of the biggest, most important changes that you make are not just inconvenient, but extremely difficult at the time. And I think important choices in the long run are almost always hard in the short term.
Sure. So a lot of Tim's story was about what he does now that he's retired. Was that thought of, I mean, you've known Tim for a long time. Do you remember, did he think of that stuff beforehand? Like, did he set up his ministry before he was to go out, or did it catch him off guard? Do you remember?
Well, I did not, admittedly, did not keep in touch as much after they left to Chicago. But Tim and his wife, Julie, have always been involved in ministry. And I think, so his story is really, really powerful. Being able to essentially be a self-supported missionary in some respects.
Incredible.
And we have multiple clients that are doing that in various capacities and wanted to build up their financial backing, their own wealth to a point where they wouldn't need to fundraise. Not that there's anything wrong with fundraising, but they felt compelled that they were in a financial position or could be in a financial position that they would not need support, allowing any support that was generated to go to other people, which is what's happening with Tim. All the support doesn't go to him and Julie, it goes to the individual projects.
To them surviving. Yeah, he was saying he could buy his own plane tickets and all of those things.
Yeah, so they're just totally self-supported.
That's awesome.
And again, for people listening, like you might not be at that point yet, and your calling might be something different. I was just meeting with a couple here recently, very, very successful, pretty prominent figures in Alaska, and just how what does the next chapter look like? You've got to have something else fulfilling you. But for Tim and Julie, because they were always involved. What financial independence did for them is allowed them to be even more involved and to have even more freedom and flexibility. And I just want to encourage people who feel that tug in the heart to be generous in a certain area. It may not be able to look like Tim and Julie yet, but I think a lot of people have this kind of a landmark or milestone in the future. Like, I'll be able to be generous when I get the raise, when the kids leave the house, I'll have more time, when whatever. But Tim and Julie had built that habit in the midst of Sarah and her cancer, job changes, a lot of transitions, just a lot of things that he didn't share and maybe not at liberty to share.
Sure.
But I've known them for a long time. But they served through all those times. So they had made a habit of service. They had made a habit of being generous, and then got to a point where that generosity could blossom even more.
That's awesome. Yeah, he talked about counting blessings, and it sounds like even though he's done all the steps needed to be done, he still has a lot of gratitude, and he's content. He's content with living in Honduras for substantial periods of time. That's got to be tough.
Well, and I think I was just talking on this a couple of days ago at church, how gratitude and contentment are so intertwined. Like you cannot be. I've never met anybody who is phenomenally content and who is not also very generous.
Sure.
Nor have I met somebody who's very, very generous who's not content. Like if you don't believe that you have enough, you're not going to willingly give what you do have to somebody else.
Right.
And I think with gratitude, and I think Tim would attest to this, gratitude is not a feeling. I believe for a lot of people, for most of us, gratitude is a discipline. It is something that we practice. And when you are grateful for what you have, your attention, your energy, your focus is looking at the things that are already in your life rather than what you think is missing or what other people have. And same thing about this, we talk about tragedy being a triggering event. As we're recording this, Charlie Kirk was assassinated just here recently. And so a lot of people are talking about, his leaving these young kids and his widow and all these different things, and people expressing appreciation for being able to see their kids through adulthood, to walk their daughter down the aisle and things like that. But again, like tragedies often highlight that, but we don't need to have a tragedy in order to be grateful. And
it's a good reminder.
Yeah, we don't need a tragedy. We don't need to lose what we have to appreciate what we used to have.
Right.
And I think with Tim, he made a regular practice of being grateful and practicing contentment. I mean, the Bible talks about that. Yeah, I mean, contentment could be a feeling, but it comes out of the practice of contentment. You don't act content because you feel content. You feel content because you've been living contented.
Right.
And Morgan Housel talks about contentment and really being the gap between expectations and reality. And a lot of times people's expectations, or if you think about it a little bit differently, maybe even entitlement.
Sure.
Their entitlement surpasses reality. And it's hard to be content if you believe the world owes you something. I deserve this. I deserve that. And we live in that culture where people feel like, okay, I've paid my dues, or maybe I haven't paid my dues, but I still deserve all these different things.
Right.
And our focus is so much on what you have that I think I want.
Right.
Rather than all the crazy blessings, all the wonderful things I already have in my life. And I think that not only does that allow people like Tim to live more comfortably, to live in more appreciation, but also to give more generously.
Well, right. It makes them more effective. I mean, what was that question that he asked? Do I have something to contribute anymore?
Yeah.
And I could see him contributing for a very long time because he's fired up about it. It's awesome.
And I think that question is a question a lot of people ask. And my warning, I guess, to people listening who maybe are retired or getting close to it, they don't have something to plug into, don't have something meaningful. And this isn't saying that you can't go to Hawaii, enjoy a beach vacation and things like that. You know, your beach vacation doesn't have to be in Honduras. But to have a form of service that you're engaged in, because here's the thing, is if you've gone a chunk of time without contributing and just consuming, and again, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the finer things in life. But if you spend too much time consuming and not contributing, if that gets out of balance, you will then start to doubt whether or not you have anything left to contribute.
Oh, I see.
And I've met people, Greg, that are in that situation where they've taken too much time to kick back and relax. And now they're wondering, am I even relevant? Do I have anything left to give?
What's my skills now? Yeah, no, that's why part of the planning process should start with not just the financial piece, but also what am I going to do in retirement? And I love how that's part of the practice here.
Yeah, it's what are you trying to build? You know, everybody's goals. I said this in my last meeting just a few minutes ago. I asked, what does retirement mean to you guys? Because it means different things. To some people, they're thinking 30 years of Saturdays, which is not what we coach people to plan for. And they talked about some of the things they would like to continue doing in a business that they still run. And you know, the types of people who get to a place of financial independence are the worst types of people to not have a challenge that they're still going after, something to pursue, and goals that they're still chasing. It might look different, but I think there's so much focus for a lot of people on what they're retiring from that they neglect to look at what are they retiring to, and what will be their contribution, what will be their impact, what kind of legacy will they be leaving in retirement.
Exactly.
Because as you and I both believe, when you no longer need a paycheck, when you're in a place where you can flip on a switch and step away from your job, step away from your career, and live comfortably without ever collecting or producing a paycheck ever again, you have so much more freedom to step into your passion, your callings, the things that you might not have been able to do at work and you're 9 to 5 every single day. But now you're able to do that because those things might not have a monetization attached to it. But you get to a point where it doesn't need to. And you can really just pursue what is fulfilling and impactful for you and the people around you. And it's a beautiful thing.
It is. And it's exciting to get to hear about stories like this with Tim Tillman, who gets to affect generations now, both here and in Honduras in retirement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the ripple effect that he's creating. There's a quote, one of my favorite movies, Gladiator. It's one of the opening scenes. What you do here echoes into eternity.
Right.
And I believe that to be true in everything we do. Our actions have an echo effect, a ripple effect, not just for our lives, but for the lives of people around us. And Tim and his wife, Julie, have been making an impact in people's lives for a long time. And they're just continuing to do that in an even more expanded role because of their financial independence.
I love it. Well, that's all I got today, Chad. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Greg.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us two quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.